My goal here is to show you how to get into aesthetic medicine. It is so much better than mainstream medicine. And this is going to be the key for you to unlock your path to freedom. And to show you, I'm going to show you all the frameworks I have. Will make it more simple, make it easier for you to become an aesthetic injector. I get asked all the time by people, how do I get into the aesthetic industry? And that is what this presentation is about, is how to become an aesthetic injector without wasting your time and without wasting your money. So without further ado, let's kind of jump in here. First things first, whenever we first get started, obviously this is a disclaimer here. I'm a medical doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. So my advice is not legal advice or financial advice. This is simply what my wife and I have learned by doing this together and in a presentation. I recommend before you start any endeavors that you always are familiar with your state laws and, obviously get, someone who is qualified to help you understand those things. And then I would say that sometimes the tension between where we are now and what we don't know holds us back from where we want to go and holds us back from who we want to be. So what this is for us to allow me to share information to help you along your journey so you can get to where you want to go. That's the whole purpose of this presentation. So first things first, I'm guessing if you're watching this, you're like me. This is not your first attempt at education. Maybe you thought you wanted to be an RN, an APRN, a CRNA, physician assistant, or even an MD. But when you got there, it wasn't like what you thought it would be. You got up to the top of the mountain and it was different than what you had imagined or what even maybe someone had told you. Have you ever been concerned that in the past you wanted to do something different, but you weren't really sure? I just wanted to put those fears to rest and let you know you can do this. You can basically make it in aesthetics. For all of us, we have trained and many of us taken on a lot of debt. For me, I spent over $300,000 on my education. And to get to the point where you look and you say, wow, I've done all this stuff and it's not what I want to do can be kind of tough. And I just wanted to encourage you that you're not alone. There's a lot of people who are thinking the exact same thing. If you look at the statistics, the burnout rates are sky high in medicine. So it is wise for you to consider at least looking at something else and something that may make you happy. The other thing that happens to a lot of people is you might have told your friends that, you wanted to become an aesthetic injector. And they don't understand. They don't get it. They're wondering, why would you want to change what looks like a dream career? And, they have their own reasons for thinking that. And I don't want you to get discouraged by that, but realize you have to follow your heart. I think Steve Jobs put it best and said, if you don't love what you do, you'll never be good at it. And I think that's really true. So you got to follow your passion, your heart. And obviously, if you're here, it means your heart has led you here to this presentation. And I want to share with you all the stuff that myself and my wife have learned on our journey, and hopefully this will help you on yours. First thing I want to say is that medicine is not what it once was, and it's not what it's made out to be. So it's not your fault if you feel that mainstream medicine is not exactly like what you thought it would be. The clear reality that's out there is that mainstream medicine is broken. It has become an assembly line medicine where you're required to work faster, see more patients, and of course, the never-ending documentation, always more requirements to document more things, use electronic EMRs, there's always something, right? Unfortunately, as those burdens increase, your ability to care for patients decreases. And so the quality of care decreases, which is actually a liability for you as the practitioner. And so as the hospital corporations and, maybe, groups or whatever are saying, hey, you got to see more patients, et cetera, because the reimbursements are going down, it just gets to a point where it feels like you are on an assembly line and it feels soul crushing. For a lot of people, it just feels horrible. And it can sometimes even feel like death by 1,000 paper cuts. If you know what I'm talking about, but raise your hand here. I can tell you that for me, it felt much like that. And the reason why is because we're not fulfilled. And when we're not fulfilled with what we do, it makes what we do very difficult and makes it much harder. So it's so important that we always find something that is fulfilling for us. I like to share with you a story. This is my friend April. She's a nurse practitioner. When she was an RN, she felt like she could do more. And so she wanted to join the ICU. So she actually became an RN in the ICU. And then when she did that, she felt like, oh man, there's got to be something more for me. I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to reach a certain level. And so she actually went back to school after being an ICU nurse and became a nurse practitioner. And when she got out, she went into primary care. And it was just like we're talking about, assembly line medicine at its worst, right? She had to see so many patients a day. She only had so little time with each patient in order to keep the assembly line running. And the patients that were coming in, they weren't easy, primary care, they have 40 medical conditions they're here to talk about. And you have, your 15 minutes to deal with that. And don't forget, in your 15 minutes, you also need to document everything too. So it just doesn't really make sense. And so she felt so unfulfilled. And that's when she started to looking into aesthetic medicine, just like you are now. And she found her way into aesthetics. And now she feels like she can spend as much time as she needs to with her patients and give appropriate treatment plans and provide the patient care that's very fulfilling to her. So if you're on here, you're likely a registered nurse, a nurse practitioner, maybe even a CRNA, or you might be a physician assistant, or you might be a doctor. Either way, this presentation is for you because we're all seeking an escape from the mainstream medical system. My goal of this presentation is really to help two different types of people: those that want to work for an existing med spa, plastic surgeon, or dermatologist, and those that want to start their own practice. My bold promise for you today is that by the end of this training, you will know what your next step is to do in order for you to continue your journey in aesthetic medicine. Why become an aesthetic injector? Here is a little painting I thought was pretty relevant. Here's, obviously a healthcare practitioner here, got the stethoscope on, standing on a candle, and it's burning at both ends. And doesn't it sometimes feel like that when we when we practice mainstream medicine? I know I felt like that a lot. I just felt like you could never have enough time. There's always something going on. You could never do everything perfectly. You'd see as many patients as possible, and then you'd still have so many charts to complete and notes and then callbacks and all sorts of stuff. So my goal here is to show you how to get into aesthetic medicine. It is so much better than mainstream medicine. And this is going to be the key for you to unlock your path to freedom. And to show you, I'm going to show you all the frameworks I have. They'll make it more simple, make it easier for you to become an aesthetic injector. Number one, I think we should all realize that mainstream medical system is literally falling apart. The more you look at it, the more you start to realize that mainstream medicine isn't going to be around forever. It has major issues. Just to give you an example, you really need to do something different, or at least consider something different. And the reason why is because Medicare will be bankrupt by 2026. These are two graphs here that you see on the screen. The first one is the trust fund for Medicare, as you can see, has basically been drawn down from 2012 to 2026, basically to zero. They're estimating that Medicare will officially go bankrupt by 2026. Different people sometimes play with these numbers differently, but nonetheless, you can see that basically the actual reserves that are in the Medicare system are essentially being depleted. Below that is a graph of the Medicare hospital insurance trust funds. So this is we consider part A of Medicare. So this is the part that actually pays for hospitals. And you can see that basically it is essentially, falling apart. Once again, they estimate it's also going to go bankrupt 2026 because it makes sense. They're both the same thing. And so you can see that Medicare will no longer be around. And why this is so important is I know people say, whoa, there's other insurances, et cetera. But you need to understand that Medicare actually is the one who sets the standard for all the CPT codes, sets the payment ratios, and all the other insurances follow it. So for example, if you perform a procedure, let's call it procedure X, and Medicare pays $15 for procedure X, Blue Cross Blue Shield might pay 110% of what Medicare pays. So they may pay just a little bit more than what Medicare pays. But if Medicare cuts that procedure cost from $15 to say $10, then also Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, Humana, et cetera, all these other insurances, they follow that same template for their own reimbursements. So as Medicare starts to have issues, so does the rest of the health system. And now more than ever, many of the health insurance companies are essentially connected with the government because many of them are offering Medicare Advantage plans. And so that's kind of an issue as well. Do you remember, maybe somebody always told you, or at least they told me, like, oh, if you go into medicine, you're going to always have a job. And while it may be true, they never said anything about the pay, right? So here's a graph here on the bottom left showing the percent change in pay. And what I want to show you guys is that, as you probably are aware, for the last 30 plus years, as long as I can remember in being medicine, there has always been pay cuts from Medicare. Every year, there's always a cut. No matter what field you're in, there's always some kind of cut. And on top of it, not only are there always consistent cuts, but they don't actually keep the reimbursement on the same par with inflation. So obviously in 1985, to buy a loaf of bread was far cheaper then than it is today. To buy milk in 1985 was far cheaper than it is today. So the value of the dollar has actually gone down over time, as is expected. But you can see that the Medicare reimbursement rates didn't follow that. They didn't increase. You didn't get a pay raise. If anything, you had pay cuts. And so the graph here on the right actually shows what is the consumer price index. These are the prices that things cost in society, is the red line. And then the blue line underneath that is the Medicare reimbursement. And you can see that as time has gone on, the gap has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we are at today where you can perform a CABG, a coronary artery bypass graft. And the professional fee for performing an open heart surgery where you cut open someone's chest, you take their veins, you sew them onto their heart, you do all the work, you put them on bypass, all that stuff, very complicated. You do all that. Your professional fee is around $1,000. You can make more money being a plumber. You can make more money probably doing yards and pool work than you can, getting paid from Medicare. So the whole point of all of this is to show you that the system is falling apart, and the reimbursements in particular are not anywhere where they should have been. And this is why most people feel like they're working harder and harder and harder, but not getting anywhere. And when I talk to a lot of my colleagues, what I hear from everyone is that it seems like there's more and more work to do every day. There's more patients to see. The patients are getting sicker. The cases are getting more complex, but they're making less money all the time. And this is exactly why, because the system essentially is designed to do this because it doesn't have any money left. So it's just kind of like standing on a burning bridge, just wondering when the bridge is going to give out. To make matters worse, the Medicare system is so bankrupt, so running out of money, that they actually have had a huge increase in clawbacks. Clawbacks are where basically Medicare hires a third-party company. This third-party company, which is a government contractor, gets a percentage of whatever they can collect, or basically anything that they say that is wrong with a billing or a procedure, anything they can say that, hey, you should never got paid for this, they get a percentage of that. And so you can see here that basically over time, the amount of clawbacks that Medicare is having is increasing and more and more and more. You can also see that while there's increasing cuts to the actual pay. So here on the right-hand side is a graph showing the Medicare reimbursement for foot and ankle procedures. Beneath that is a graph for orthopedic procedures above the foot and ankle. And you can see both of them starkly going down over time. The amount you're getting paid is decreasing. In the meantime, the amount of paperwork you need to fill out is increasing. And the chance that Medicare comes back to you or your hospital and says, hey, remember all those surgeries you did? We're not going to pay for them. You get to pay for them. Give us the money back and have a nice day. And so while that's happening, literally hospital systems are having trouble even, staying afloat in many cases, because they could have a huge clawback because there was one piece of paperwork not filled out correctly, or there was a vague rule that wasn't defined, and then later it gets defined, but then they retroactively change it. So you can see that the Medicare system is actually damaging the healthcare profession, and is if anything, is actually worsening the care for patients because it is essentially bankrupt. And what you see is provider burnout is the highest levels ever in recorded history. 88% of medical providers report being severely stressed. 77.8%, let's just call it 78%, feel burned out. That's a strong majority. 2 times the number of providers were burned out versus the average US healthcare worker. So if you work in medicine, you're 200% more likely to be burned out than if you work another job. Kind of says something about the system, right? 65.7% of providers report EHR and documentation negatively affects the patient relationship. But what have they done about it? Nothing. In fact, if anything, you have more to document and more charts to fill out and more things to sign. And now those signatures are even more important. Your documentation is more important because guess what? There might be a clawback, and your hospital, your group, or yourself, Medicare come in and take all that money back, and you get to pay for someone else's healthcare. It just really is a system that's unsustainable. The other thing that's happening is that we're losing the art of medical practice. Basically, as insurance companies and Medicare start to control everything that we do, they basically has come to a point where most people don't have the ability to treat patients the way that they want to. I can tell you this in my own example, that basically I would see people all the time back when I actually used to take Medicare before I went into aesthetics. I would see people all the time. And the question wasn't what is best for the patient. The question is, what would the insurance pay for? And so much of the care wasn't even dictated by medical research, physician ideas, like what could help the patient's preference on how to get treated. None of that mattered. The only thing that mattered is what would they pay for, because the system was set up in such a way that there's an algorithm and everybody goes through it, even if it doesn't benefit them. That's the way it is. And, if they're not going to pay for it, then too bad, you're not going to get healthcare. And so here's a beautiful tweet that I saw that was really kind of hit the nail on the head here. It says, absolutely wild that the doctor can prescribe you some medicine and then the insurance company can be like, nah, not feeling it, and deny it. And this is so true. And I can only tell you this has increased and increased. I talked to some of my colleagues that still treat insurance patients, and they say the same thing, that it's actually gotten to a point where they don't even try to prescribe you medications that are not directly on the formulary that are the cheapest, because the amount of paperwork and the back and forth, you could spend hours on it. And of course, you don't get paid anything for that. It's just more time that you get to donate from your family, from your other part of your life to basically deal with bureaucracy that is totally unnecessary. So in order for you to get into medicine, you had to be one of the best performing students and definitely highly driven. Like, especially if you got into medicine, you didn't get into medicine by accident. I don't know anybody who became a nurse practitioner by accident. I don't know anybody who became an RN by accident. I don't know anybody who became a doctor by accident. You had to have a certain set of skills. You had to work very diligently, and you had to pursue this. It's not like this was just something that, you were born with or something. You had to have a certain set of skills. And here's just an example of some of those skills here: active listening, reading comprehension, judgment, decision-making, critical thinking, scientific skills, problem solving, oral expression. Those are all just some of the skills that you need to actually practice medicine, no matter what level you're at. And what happens is, once you're in medicine, you start to realize that the way the system is set up is basically somewhat to put you as a cog in a wheel or cog in a system. You're not able to even, use your creative potential. For most people that are practitioners, there's skill growth areas. Their ability to do skills are decreasing while the production requirements on them are increasing. They want you to do the same thing over and over, no matter what. The insurance companies are going to tell you what you're allowed to do. And they tell you that basically because they say, hey, I'm not going to pay for it. So if you want to do it, you get to pay for it. And for most of us, we're not in the benefit of offering, free healthcare to people. But basically, your skills and your creativity have been absolutely taken away from you by a system that essentially is falling apart. And that's just another reason why you have to escape. And that's why I want to talk briefly about the art of aesthetic medicine. One of the best things about going into aesthetics is that it changes the way that you practice. You're no longer restrained by, certain rules and algorithms by insurance companies or Medicare or whatever. There is an art to what you do. The way that you are able to make someone attractive or make someone beautiful by your procedures, that is up to you. It's not up to anybody else. You have autonomy in doing it. You can decide where to put the Botox. You can decide where to put the fillers. You can decide where to put the regenerative injections, right? That is an art you get to practice. And for me, and for most of the people that I've talked to that went into aesthetic medicine, there was a creative part of us that had existed that really drove us into medicine. And when we got to the actual practice of medicine, all that had been taken away. No longer was it about, hey, let's do what's best for the patient. Let me think of something that may help the patient the most. It was the algorithm defined. The insurance company wants you to do this, this, this. Even if it doesn't make sense, you have to do it. And now in aesthetics, you don't have that anymore. You can decide what kind of treatment you want to give. You can decide what's best for the patient. You and the patient can work together and figure out how you're going to accomplish the goal. And it's so fun. The other thing I've loved about aesthetic medicine is that it in itself is such a fun thing to study. What you see here on the left is this little squiggly line that looks kind of like a nautilus shell. Is actually a nautilus shell, by the way, is actually called the golden ratio. It's a mathematical ratio that's found all in nature. It's found in our Milky Way galaxy. It's found on the curve of a nautilus shell. It's found in a sunflower. And it's also found on our faces. And so these ratios are really important. And one of the coolest things that you learn in aesthetics is how to see these ratios and how you can adjust these ratios on people's face, or I guess other body parts if you want to, and basically make them more attractive because you understand the art of aesthetic medicine. And it's something that's so fulfilling. And for me, it filled a big gap that was there in medicine because I felt like I didn't have any creativity or even really any input into the way things worked. Patients came in, there was an algorithm defined by Medicare, an algorithm defined by Blue Cross, an algorithm defined by Humana, and you had to do whatever that was, and that was it. Now there's none of that. I can actually look at someone and say, hey, what is it that you desire? And then I can look at these ratios and you can give them the ability to have such great experience and so much confidence. It's so fun. The most important thing I feel, and what most people I think go into aesthetic medicine for as well, is this autonomy of practice. I don't know about you, but I don't like having somebody tell me what to do all the time, especially someone who many times not as well trained as you, which happens all the time in the hospital. I'd see all the time where, a nurse manager will be telling, someone to do things in a certain way, and the person they're telling actually has more experience than they do. And it just rubbed me the wrong way. So autonomy of practice is so important. So aesthetic practitioners enjoy the highest levels of autonomy in medicine. Even if you're an RN, while you may have a certain role or may have certain things that you need to do, you may have a standard operating procedure which you follow, it is up to you how you do it. It's up to you to build a relationship to the patient. You have an autonomy that you don't normally have in the mainstream medical system. It's so nice. I like this cartoon here on the left. It says there are two opportunities available. You can be Pharaoh's physician or Pharaoh's slave. If I were you, I'd go with the slave option because the working conditions are better. And doesn't that seem sometimes like what happens in medicine? The working conditions are so bad, even though your only job is to help people, and you'd be better off as a slave in some cases. So here's just some more examples of autonomy of practice. The ability for you to see a patient, assess them, understand their needs, and then you make the deciding decision as to how you want to practice. How do you want to achieve that? And there's something that's so fulfilling about that because it's something that you are able to determine, and you're not following orders from someone else. Someone else is not making all the decisions, and you're an automaton that's just, doing whatever they say. You get to make your own call. You get to make your own destiny. You get to basically, you're the captain of the ship. Like if you and the patient decide, hey, I really need to, I have over time, I have a bone loss here, and I have, these nasolabial folds are getting worse. Well, you can decide, hey, I'm going to put some filler in here. It's going to pull up your face and make you look younger. And it's going to allow for the ratios to be better in your face. And that autonomy is some of the best things that really, to me, it's the only thing that I've found in medicine that has the most autonomy is aesthetics. So this is a picture of me. I'm Adam Sewell. I've had 2 med spas. One was Swan Center Aesthetics, and the one that we have right now is Longevity Texas. In the past 7 years, I've had the opportunity to open not 1, but 2 of them. And I'll tell you, I've learned a lot. And I've been able to also help guide others to the process of opening their own aesthetic practices. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, just a few years ago, we were kind of in a different situation. This is a picture of my wife here, Jennifer Sewell. She's a CRNA. And basically, what we found was that even though we had both done everything that we were told to do, work really hard, study really hard, get the degree, get a good job, that kind of thing, make a lot of money, like focus on all these things. What we found was that it wasn't working out. Although we worked a ton, the amount of time that we had was very limited. Many times, myself and Jennifer would miss time with our kids. We weren't able to go to school events. We couldn't drop off our kids or pick our kids up on time many times because of the demands of the operating room. We had, so many different babysitters and juggling all of that. And will somebody be able to pick up our son today? There was an extra add-on. And so now we can't, be able to go to Dad and Donuts anymore because now I got this new case added on. And it got to a point where we were just run down, and it felt like all week we worked as hard as we could. And then on the weekends that we did have off, we spent almost all weekend sleeping and recovering. And I remember this because it was usually Sunday at 8 p.m. is when I started to feel like I came back to normal. Like I felt like I got enough rest where I was like, oh, my mind is back to normal. And I remember thinking like, oh, in just a few hours, I'll be back up and heading to work, And so it just felt like this kind of treadmill. I was, running, doing the same thing, like a hamster wheel, and it just wasn't good. And so we had to do something else. And so what we figured out was that it didn't really make a lot of sense for us to continue working in the mainstream medical system. Jennifer had this aha moment, and it really shocked a lot of people because she was the first to go into the aesthetics. And basically what happened was that she realized that she would actually prefer, and actually was better for her and her life, and really all of our lives, for her to actually do aesthetics instead of being a CRNA. Now that may sound shocking because a lot of people work their entire lives to become a CRNA. There's a lot of nurses that work really hard with the goal of becoming a CRNA, where they can have even more autonomy than maybe being an RN. They get to practice in the operating room, etc. But what we found was sort of 3 factors that really changed everything. One was that in aesthetics, you have healthy and happy patients. In the hospital, you don't, right? You got sick people. Many times they're not happy being there, etc. In aesthetics, you're in charge of your own schedule. We were never in charge of our schedules in the hospital. Never, ever. There's always something like the group had a schedule, the administrators had a schedule. Many times I remember we would try to book trips and these kind of things, and we wouldn't be able to because the schedule wasn't out yet. And so we'd have to wait for them to make a schedule just to see when we could take our time off. It just wasn't good. The other thing that we found was that the income was expandable. For both Jennifer and I, we worked very hard, and many times our work was not really controlled by us. It was controlled by the hospital or the flow of the patients coming in. So for example, if there was one case on or you did 20 cases, you got paid the same because it was determined by external factors. Well, in aesthetics, that doesn't happen. In aesthetics, not only are the people healthy and happy that you get to see, not only do you get to choose your own schedule, but if you do want to work a lot, you can fill up an entire day, and guess what? You get paid more to work more. And so it's really awesome in that regards, because I can only tell you how many times I had to work extra or had to stay late or do something else because, oh, well, this is what's needed. Oh, we had an add-on. Oh, so-and-so is sick. We need you to cover. And all the times that happens, that was just considered part of your job. You didn't pay it any different. It was the same. So here's a friend of mine. This is Catherine. She's a registered nurse. She found her way into aesthetics, and Catherine was somebody who just absolutely loved helping patients. You know, the nurse that just loves to interact with people? This is her. So she loves helping people. Like when she was practicing in mainstream medicine, she would help a lot of people that were diabetic. She'd help them check their blood sugar, maintain their diet, train them on how to use their medications, making sure they organize their meds right, etc. She just loved helping these patients, and through her care, many of these patients would be able to manage their own personal care and medication regimens, and they would become confident in their decisions. She realized that by doing aesthetics, by being her own boss, by having her own practice, she could spend as much time with her patients as she wanted to help formulate treatment plans that gave them the best outcomes and increased confidence. And in addition to that, the patients would have more confidence from the aesthetic procedures, because one of the best things that happens in aesthetics is when you take someone who has an issue. Maybe they are worried because they have signs of aging. Maybe they have lines in their forehead. Maybe they have crow's feet. So many different things that you can treat when you learn aesthetics. And you take that and you're able to take that away. A level of confidence develops in that person. And that person almost becomes like a new person. It's so exciting. And so she was able to see that and able to give that so much more to people because she actually loved doing it. She was able to take the best parts of medicine and basically practice them in her aesthetics practice, where she is her own boss, and she actually owns her own practice, by the way. So in addition to myself and my wife, we have a few friends that absolutely love the aesthetic industry and have been game changers. I'll share with you some more of their stories as we go on. And so there's really three things that you should know about aesthetic medicine. Number one, aesthetics is a great opportunity to transition from where you are right now and still use your degree. Whenever I was trapped in mainstream medicine, it just felt crazy to abandon all the years I spent getting this degree, all the money I invested. It just felt insane, but I didn't like what I was doing. And to be honest, the mainstream medical system doesn't make your life very good. And what's great about aesthetics is it's a growing industry. It's very lucrative and it has lifestyle freedom. You're not going to have emergencies in the middle of the night with aesthetics. It's very rare for that to happen, Whereas in mainstream medicine, that happened all the time, Number two is that you can do this just by the fact that you're on this training and you're seeking out more information tells me that you are someone who is meant for more. And then number three, really important life lesson is to always use success hacks. You can always shortcut your way to success by learning the framework from someone who has already done it. So aesthetics as an industry, it is amazing the growth of aesthetics, and we're only getting started. So aesthetics already has $15 billion per year spent on aesthetics. About 67% of all those procedures are non-surgical procedures. These are not plastic surgeons doing operations. These are, non-invasive procedures such as, or I should say non-invasive. These are procedures such as Botox, filler, regenerative medicine injections, etc. 7.4 million people in the US are receiving Botox treatments as of this time. 7.4 million people in the US are receiving Botox treatments. And the number goes even higher when you look internationally. The Botox market is currently worth about 4.4 billion, but it is only getting started. And the reason why I say it's only getting started is that Allergan, the maker of Botox, actually did a study. And in the study, they tried to figure out how much of the marketplace has actually been is actually using Botox? Like, how much market penetration do we have? And so they wanted to know, of all their advertising, of all the people getting Botox, how many more people are out there that are not getting Botox, but that could? And so what they found was that the market was only 5% saturated. So only 5% of people actually get Botox. 95% of the market, majority of the market, far majority of the market actually is still open. And there's so much demand for it. And that's what we see all the time in our med spa, is that we have more people that are coming who have never had any kind of aesthetic procedure, and they're interested in aesthetics, but they didn't really know how to do it. And then when they meet you, they're like, oh, well, now that I got Botox, I'm interested in filler. Now I'm interested in filler, I'm interested in this. And it's just an amazing thing, because it's not like there's only a few people getting Botox. The number of people is constantly expanding over time. And majority of the patients that we have that are new patients have never had anything done. Many of them are, basically brand new to this. Here's a study as well from the Aesthetic Society showing that Americans spend more than $15 billion on aesthetic procedures. And you can see that the way that they're actually showing the growth, the way they're projecting the growth is significant. So take a look at this. You can see that by 2027, the growth is through the roof. And this has to do with, obviously, collagen treatments. Hyaluronic acid is the HA, the purple one. Botox is the blue one. Calcium hydroxyapatite, which is the green one there. And then fillers that are polymer based are the blue ones. So you can see that basically all areas of aesthetics are growing, and you'll learn more about each of these things later. But the whole idea here is that the market is just continuing to grow, and there's a lot of reasons why. So why the medical aesthetics industry is crisis-proof and growing. Here's an article from December of 2022 showing that the global aesthetic market was valued at $16.5 billion back in 2022, and is expected to continue to expand with a growth rate of 18.5% from 2023 to 2032. So, we're looking at a massive growth. And this is according to a research company called Pre-Scouter, which is a famous Fortune 500 research company. During the last 2 years of all the restrictions and lockdowns due to the pandemic, the business of medical aesthetics actually increased. So not only was it crisis resistant, it didn't actually decrease, actually increased. Obviously, this is, the urge to look good and to feel good and to have confidence is something that is deep ingrained into people. And what happens is this market has, if anything, has shown that there's more people that are worried about that than ever before. And in fact, during the pandemic, there was more people who were worried about how they looked and seeking aesthetic treatments than ever before. And North America, by the way, was projected to contribute more than 41% of the entire market revenue. So the North American market is actually the fastest growing and one of the largest areas of all the markets in the world. Here's our med spa called Longevity Texas. We started at the end of 2020. There's a med spa in almost every corner of our city. I think there's something to the effect of like 9 plastic surgeons and something like 18 med spas in our one town. There's a med spa that's literally 3 doors down from us. But there's so much business here. We have a wait list. Like, we actually are not taking people. Like, we have to actually enter a wait list, and then when we have time, we'll take them. There's so much business to be had. And that's why I want to show you is that there's so many people that have never had any aesthetic procedures that are interested, and they're waiting for someone to basically offer that to them, and someone to care for them and to help them on their aesthetic journey, which is so fun and so rewarding in so many different ways. I remember a mentor once told me that wealth is like water. You just need to figure out which way it's traveling and get in front of it, and you're bound to get wet. And so this is a very special time in history where this has never really happened before. In the United States, we have people that are living longer than ever before, and we have a huge population of baby boomers that are basically retiring, and as they're aging, they need more things. They want to still be youthful. There's a lot of things that are driving this, and we'll talk about them, but there's a huge demand that continues to increase for aesthetic treatments, and some of it is because of stuff like this. So I don't know if you've ever seen this meme. It went viral. It was really funny. But basically, what a 65-year-old looks like now is totally different than what a 65-year-old looked like 20 years ago, and especially compared to 40 years ago. And, here's a beautiful meme here. And you got, this is the lady from Golden Girls here at 50 years old. And then now in 2020, or now, a couple years ago in 2020, you have J-Lo essentially, who's also 50 years old, looking totally different. Just the idea that a 50-year-old would be doing that kind of dance and spinning around like that would never have crossed your mind in 1985. But now it's considered, standard. Why is this the best time to enter the aesthetics market? There's several factors that are really driving this. So let's walk through them. One is that there's an aging population. By 2030, all baby boomers will be older than 65. And that means 1 in every 5 residents in the country will be retirement age. This means that there's a huge amount of people that are aging, and those people that are aging are seeking treatments to maintain a more youthful appearance. Also, at the same time, there's been a huge increase on the importance of looks. A survey conducted by the American Society of Plastic Surgeons in 2020 revealed that almost half of adult Americans were contemplating plastic surgery. That's how important looks are. Looks are becoming more important in our society. Be it good or bad, this is what's happening. The next thing is elongation of the workforce participation. This is a huge driver that I see all the time. Many people are working longer than ever, either due to financial issues, they may need to make more money, or a lot of them, they don't need more money, but they want to stay active because they start to realize like, hey, if I sit at home and watch TV all day, it's not good for me. It's not good for my health. And so in 2016, 20% of Americans age 65 and older were working or looking for actually additional work. And that's double the amount of people that were searching for work in 1985 in that age group. So the pressure to maintain a youthful image in an age-diverse workforce really is increasing a lot of the demands for aesthetic treatment. And I see this all the time. We have people that are working, they've gotten maybe to the top of their game in their job or in their career, and they don't want to retire. They are enjoying it. They love what they do. They don't actually want to quit. They enjoy what they do, but they need to look young because there's other people that are entering the workforce that look young, and they need to have a youthful appearance because it's very important. And let's just be honest, as you see from the point above here, people are definitely going to judge you based on how you look and, first impression, everything like that. The next thing that's really driving this a lot is social media. Social media expands. The influence of social media is so profound. And social media has been linked to body dissatisfaction and an increased desire for cosmetic procedures. So it's so important that basically you have to realize that as social media expands, so does the demand for these aesthetic procedures. And that is what you're seeing in many times. So when Instagram first came out, the amount of people that are interested in aesthetics skyrocketed. Now TikTok is out, right? So if TikTok's taking over the world, it seems like it's growing so fast. Now the amount of demand for procedures is skyrocketing even more. As more social media comes out, the importance of looking good and feeling confident and everything like that is increasing. So these are the main factors that are really driving that. So let's talk about you as an injector. You already have medical education, whatever that is. You already have critical thinking skills, and you're already a lifelong learner, which is just required to have a medical education. So it makes sense that you would consider being an injector. What if you could take all your current skills and education and put it into a fulfilling career? What if you could control your schedule and treat patients who appreciate your skills and expertise? Here is just a breakdown of the difference between the mainstream medicine life and the aesthetic medicine life. So in mainstream medicine, you have patients that are reporting for sick care. They're ill. Many times they're not very happy. As you can see here, in mainstream medicine, patients are emotionally liable. How many times do you have an angry patient or been yelled at by a patient or seen, I can't tell you how many times I would consider it to be very abusive. Many of the patients that came in, just to staff members, and very demeaning and insulting. It's sad, but true. That's what's happening. And then a lot of the patients in mainstream medicine actually prefer not to be treated. Many of them are there because they have to be there. If they had the choice, they would leave. If they didn't need to have care to save their life, they wouldn't be there. It's not like they woke up today and say, hey, I can't wait to go to the hospital today. They're there because of an external factor. But if you look at aesthetic medicine, totally different. It's the opposite picture. Patients only come for well care. In fact, if someone's really sick, you're not going to do aesthetic medicine procedures on them. But they only come because they're already healthy, they're already well. And then when they come, their emotional state is that they're usually very happy and excited. Like the people that you treat are people that are, they're obviously paying for this. They're excited to be here. It's something that they woke up today and they said, hey, I can't wait to get my Botox. They actually are interested in doing that. And the patients desire the treatments. You're not trying to force treatments down people's throats. You're not trying to argue with people to do what they need to do to get their health back. They actually want this. And so it's such a different lifestyle, and it's so important. These are some text messages that have come into our practice. Many of them are for my wife, Jennifer, who does a lot of great work with fillers. But basically, take a look at these and ask yourself, when is the last time you received any message like this from a patient you treated in mainstream medicine? I know for a fact, I never got any of that, and I treated thousands of patients. And I would get people that were very nice. It's in cards or something like this. but it was so rare. In fact, many of the times I felt like as a practitioner in mainstream medicine, they kind of take you for granted. You're just supposed to do that. Oh, you're a nurse. You're supposed to do that. It's, your job. When you're in aesthetic medicine, people are so grateful. Take a look at this one. You're a miracle worker. I know I still have some time for this dysport to set in, but I have arches in my brows. No straight line brows touching my lashes. Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to me. Wow. How would you be excited to see that patient again? I know I would be. Here's another one. Basically checking on this patient here. Said, how's your face? Amazing. I'll send you pics in a few, but the dysport already kicked in. 3 love faces. And then here's another one. Twice last week, I've had people tell me I look 5 years younger. Thanks for working your magic. I love that one. I love it when people, one of the best things you have as a aesthetic injector is when people tell you, nobody knows what I did, but they just tell me I look younger and healthier. And that means you hit the nail right on the head of that one. This is another great one that Jennifer got. Girl, I love my dysport. Sign me up for appointments for the rest of my life. Thank you so much. Love the products too. I'm going to collect the whole line. So these are just some of the things that you'll get. I remember one time I came from the operating rooms when Jennifer first started. She was doing aesthetics and I was still on the mainstream medicine side. And I worked really hard on this one patient. It taken like 3 or 4 hours to do this case. I got a ton of radiation because we were using fluoroscopy at the time. And I got done. I was just like so exhausted. And at the end, the patient was like kind of almost rude and like just a little demeaning, like, oh, it took so long. Like, why is it? It's like, I worked so hard to help you, And then that same day, Jennifer came home and she had a gift from her patient. And it was a very nice gift. It was very fancy. And I was thinking like, here I am doing dangerous work, getting exposed to radiation, doing advanced things. And the patient at the end of the day is just like, whatever. And then you have somebody you do Botox and filler on and they're like, giving you gifts. It makes you realize there's a better world out there for you. So the skills you already have learned will give you significant advantage as an aesthetic injector. You've already dealt with the hardest areas of medicine. Going into aesthetics is not nearly as hard as some of the stuff that we have to do in mainstream medicine. As an aesthetic injector, the patients you treat are healthy, happy, and coming to you is a joy for them. And that is a huge game changer. Imagine if every day was actually fun to go to work and you actually looked forward to seeing patients. It's definitely a life-changing thing. Let's talk about success hacks real quick. A couple of things that I've learned. I actually learned this from a mentor and I found it to be true in my life. Success loves speed. Just by watching this training, you're going to learn what took me many hours and a lot of money to figure out. I've documented my experience. You can have a step-by-step system to do this on your own. So please follow the proven path. And this is a funny cartoon. Here's these two guys trying to pull this kind of box of rocks here. And they have a square wheel, which is very difficult. You see it's cutting the ground. And then here's a guy with 2 circular wheels that would help them and save them so much effort. But they say, no thanks, we're too busy. So how would your life be different? If you could spend 30 days researching, trying to figure everything out, doing all this, trying to figure out on your own, you can, please feel free. But if you could follow a proven path, wouldn't that save you a lot of time and heartache? It definitely would. So I'd recommend it. So don't reinvent the wheels. There have been hundreds of medical doctors, RNs, PAs, ARNPs, CRNAs go through this pathway and become aesthetic injectors. Many of them open their own med spa. But there's 3 skill sets you need to know in order for you to become a well-versed aesthetic injector. So this is definitely things to write down. If you're making notes, this is a writer-downer. What training do you need? Number 1, you need to have training in neuromodulator. These are things like Botox, Dysport, Jeuveau. This skill set gives you the ability to relax muscles, which improves the appearance of your patient. It allows you to treat facial lines, wrinkles, asymmetry, and shaping of the facial musculature. And as they say in the industry, Botox is the gateway drug. Many people will come seeking Botox, even though they will also get other procedures as well. They just don't know about many of those other procedures yet. And so they come in for Botox, and many times they end up, getting other things. Dermal filler is the second thing that you really need to know. It's a skill set that gives you the ability to add volume and shape to patient's face and appearance. Small volumes of dermal filler make huge changes in appearance, and they really change the signs of aging. And I'll show you some before and after examples here in a minute. But a dermal filler is a really great skill set to have. And many times between dermal filler and Botox, you can do so many things together. It's amazing. And then finally, one of my favorite skill sets is regenerative facial treatments. These are things like platelet-rich plasma, platelet-rich fibrin matrix, and cytorejuve. We'll talk more about all those, what all this stuff means, and all those mnemonics. But these are things that basically harness the regenerative potential of someone's body, and then allows you to actually change the quality and the texture of their skin by taking these regenerative factors in their body, harvesting them, and basically increasing the amount of collagen and elastin someone has in their face. So essentially like regrowing their skin, if you will, by harnessing these factors. It's some of the most powerful things you can do in aesthetics. It's very fun, and patients love these dramatic transformations, and you're going to love having this skill set. So here's some example of neuromodulator or Botox procedures. You can see here, so many times people get these little 11s in their, and right here above their nose, and these often make people look angry. Well, with the skill set of neuromodulator, you can take it away for them. So easy. Many times people are very, very concerned about the wrinkles around their eyes. Everybody, the eyes are the windows to the soul. And so it's really important to have good curtains, I guess, way to say. So, it's very important that you treat these wrinkles here. And so by doing that, using neuromodulator, you can take that away, and people are so happy for that. Here's a gentleman here. You can see here, he has just a little bit of aging here on his face. You got some lines that are horizontal, obviously makes him look much older. Well, after treatment, boom, those are gone. And now he looks so much younger. How do you think that patient would feel towards you once he gets that treatment? You know it. He's going to love it, right? Here's some examples of dermal fillers. I love fillers. They're so fun. Basically, here's a lady who has lines around her nasolabial folds. She's line around her mouth. It makes people look much, much older. Well, you can fix that with one treatment with filler. Take a look. Very beautiful. Here's a lady who doesn't necessarily have anything terribly wrong, but you can definitely tell she has signs of aging. She has a little bit of a jowl here on the side. She has a nasolabial fold here. And you notice that she has volume loss under her eyes and where her cheeks are. And we'll teach you how to identify all these things in training. But it's really important that you see that you can actually add that volume right back to her in one treatment. And look how much more youthful that person looks. And how do you think their confidence is? And how do you think they like you? They love you because you gave them their confidence back, and they look younger and they look happier, and they don't look distorted. They don't look anything unusual. They have a natural beauty that you can give them. Here's an example of someone who has a oral commissure line. So this is a fancy way of saying near the side of the mouth, there's this line that goes down. Well, take a look. You can fix that too with dermal fillers. So awesome. And it really takes away years off someone's face. Now, my personal favorite, of course, is the regenerative medicine injections. These are incredible. These were kind of made popular by Kim Kardashian. So here's Kim Kardashian with a whole bunch of what appears to be blood on her face. This is probably PRP. And she made this very popular. But take a look at what you can do. So up here on the right-hand side, this woman has a terrible scar on her cheek. Very obvious. With just a few treatments, look at that. Almost completely gone. Here's someone who has had probably cystic acne in the past. And so they have a very pebbled appearance on their face. And then after treatment, look at that. All those, pock marks gone. You have the ability to do that to people. It's amazing. You're going to love it, and people are going to love it too. Here's another lady here. Obviously, same kind of deal. She has definitely some pock marks here. Also has what appears to be a static line. So a line here that's related to aging. After treatment, not only does she look younger, but all those pock marks are gone. Looks like a totally different person. Looks like a younger version of herself. And that's the ability, and that's the power that you're going to have to wield when you learn aesthetic medicine. A couple recommendations for training, just so you know, you always want to find training that has small class ratios. If you go to big training institutions, you're going to be one person in a big room of a whole bunch of people. Typically, the education is not as good as if you can have a small class, right? If it's only you and a few other people, you're going to be able to interact with the patients more. You're going to get more hands-on. You're going to be able to interact with the instructors. It's just more important. Also, you want to know the actual injecting time. Are you actually going to be able to inject? My first experience when I went to training many, many years ago, I went to a big box trainer. They're actually like one of the more popular trainers that are out there. It's a big company. And when I got there, they said I'd have hands-on for Botox and filler. And what ended up happening is there were so many people there. We had so few models to actually work on. I think I got one injection on one side of the face, and that was it. And it was with filler. I never got a chance to even do Botox. So that was my experience with that company. Just got to make sure you have a good small class where you get actual hands-on injecting, because that's where you learn. You learn the didactics first, and you learn the actual skill set from the injections. And then most important, which people don't think about, is you really need to have ongoing support after training. Support is everything, because No offense, but I don't think you're going to learn everything in just one short period of time. Like aesthetics is a medical field, just like everything else, and just like all medical procedures, there's going to be constant amount of education and learning that's going on. And so here's a pathway that kind of shows you how those skill sets fit in and what they do. So we're here right now, you're watching Introduction to Aesthetics, is another name to call that. And basically here you're learning how to get started correctly. The next thing I would recommend is that you do a neuromodulator certification where you get certified to do things like Botox, etc. And the reason why is this is the most commonly requested procedure. As I mentioned before, a lot of people don't know anything about the more advanced procedures. So they just, hey, I think I need Botox. I want to reverse some signs of aging. They don't know anything else. So making sure that you have certification in that is really important. Next, go to dermal filler certification. You can get basically with dermal filler. So as you saw from the before and after pictures, it's such a great procedure. You can add volume and it can really completely change the way someone's face is. And so it allows you to sculpt faces. And of course, what's really popular, of course, are lips, right? Everybody seems to want to have lip injections. So it allows you to do that too. And then the other skill set is regenerative facial skill set. And those are the PRP, the PRFM, and Cytorejuve. Those are all regenerative factors that you can learn how to harvest from a patient's body and also regenerate the tissues of the face, making those amazing results we just saw, having people go from having, pock marks or huge scars on their face to having that completely resolved by your treatment. So fun. And then, of course, you need to have ongoing support as well. So there's really two pathways that you can choose whenever you go into the aesthetics field. One is you can work for an existing med spa or clinic. And in this case, all you need to do is get your certifications and then head to work. Or two, a lot of people want to work for themselves. They want to have their own practice. Maybe they want to own their own med spa. And nothing wrong with that. That's what I've done twice. So I would definitely recommend it. What do you need to set up if you want to own your own practice? So let's walk through that real briefly here. Number one is you need to figure out if you can practice independently. If you're a doctor, then yes, you can. If you're an RN, you may need a medical director. Depends on the state. If you're a PA, you'll likely need somebody who's a medical collaborator. If you're a CRNA, it's very state specific. And if you're a nurse practitioner, it's state specific. In some states, you can be your own medical director as a nurse practitioner, while in other states, you may need to have a medical director. So what about all these medical directors? What's this about? Well, if you're an RN, just as our friend Catherine has a medical director, but pretty much practices on her own. So basically, you can find medical directors through many different ways. You can find them online. You can find them, through your warm network of people or we can help connect you to one. We work with a company that has specially negotiated rates, and we'll connect you to a medical director. And we also have a business plan already written for you where you literally fill in the blanks and you submit this business plan to the medical director and you have everything you need. Everything's done for you. And the medical director's role is essentially to provide an ongoing support for you. So medical directors will define what are called standard operating procedures, and then it'll be up to you to use those standard operating procedures to fulfill the treatments for the patients. So the autonomy you get is huge, and the ability for, as an RN, for example, to own your own practice and to be able to essentially do procedures on your own is enabled by the fact that you have a medical director. And the costs for medical directors highly vary depending on what state they are, depending on how many people you're seeing, and also depending on what are the legal requirements. Obviously, if you're in a state that has more stringent legal requirements where maybe you have to meet all the time in person, it's going to be more expensive than if you're in a state where you can simply, do a call every other month. So a little different by each state. Let's talk briefly about insurance. Just to give you an example of the cost of an insurance policy for malpractice for aesthetics, my insurance policy is $2,355 a year. And I have coverage for aesthetics and all the aesthetic procedures. So it's very, very cheap compared to what I consider mainstream medical insurance. I paid a lot more for that. You're going to need to have professional liability the same way that you have malpractice insurance when you practice at the hospital. I would recommend that you have malpractice insurance when you do your aesthetics. You're also going to need to have a general liability or kind of contents policy. These are not very expensive. These are policies that, protect you should, you're doing Botox on someone and their best friend slips and falls in your office. Well, you're going to want to have some kind of insurance if that happens. If your office burns down with all of your supplies in it, you want to have some kind of insurance for that. That's the general liability insurance. So definitely something to consider there. There's really three types of things that you need to know, or really 3 points you need to know about business formation. For most people, you can form your businesses online. You can go to a website like LegalZoom. You can go to the website like Nolo, NOLO.com. There's so many out there, and they will actually form a company for you. Basically, most people that will have an LLC or what's called a limited liability company, you can form that immediately on your own. You can also fill out the form yourself. For most states, if you do it yourself, it's around $130 or so. If you have somebody else do it, it could be $300 to $600. If you have a medical director, they will have their own company called a PLC, which is a professional limited liability company. And then you guys will interact through an agreement called an MSO, which is called a management service organization. So basically, this is an operating agreement that basically tells how your company will work with the medical director's company. And if you set these three up, that's all you need to get going. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's talk about physical locations. A lot of people start with mobile services. So one of the easiest ways to get started is simply to offer mobile Botox. There's a huge demand for it. People love doing Botox parties. You can also make a lot of money at Botox parties. You can do Botox mobily. However, at some point, you may want to get your own office. And for a lot of people, that seems really scary, but it's not as bad as you think. For many cases, what happens is that when you have your own office, you can rent an office in someone else's office. For example, you could rent an office from a chiropractor. You could rent an office from a medical doctor, where maybe you rent one room in the clinic. And that's all you need to be able to see patients. What else will you need? You're definitely going to need to have some kind of phone number that people can reach you on. You definitely want to post that as a business number. So I wouldn't recommend your own personal number. It's probably not the best idea. But you can buy an additional cell phone, or you can use some of the solutions that we can connect you with to get a different number that goes to your cell phone. So when patients call, you can tell, hey, it's a patient that's calling me for sure. And you can actually see who it is, but they don't have your personal number. So, they're not bothering you when you're in off hours, etc. The next thing is a charting system. You'll need to have some way to chart and make notes. It's very easy to find this. We also have a solution for you if you need it. And a website. I definitely need a website because people will research you. And the most common thing that happens is that when you do a great job for someone, like we've seen in some of the before and after photos, you do something like that for someone, they will tell everybody about it. So your name's going to be all over. And so it's important to have a website that when people search for you, they can find out a little bit more about you. How do you obtain products for your med spa or for your practice? You're going to need to have stuff like neurotoxin or neuromodulator, dermal fillers. Well, you need to get accounts at Allergan and Galderma, and we can help you set those up if you need help. But those are the main two that you'll need. And then you're going to need to have medical supply accounts, like to get needles, syringes, etc. And those are through McKesson is the big one. And then we have a special discounted one just for members of the Aesthetic Nurses Club that will allow you to get medical supplies even cheaper than if you started on your own, because you get the same buying power as a hospital corporation. But it's very simple to do that, and you can get those up and running. Most of the time for these accounts, you're going to need to have your medical director on these accounts because they'll want to have some kind of physician on there. Obviously, if you're your own physician or you're practicing as your own medical director, like for example, in Washington, you can be a nurse practitioner who is your own medical director, and then you would be on these accounts. So it depends on the state law, but they're not hard to set up. And obviously these people want to do business with you. They want to sell you things, so they'll work with you. So let's talk real quick about the cost of products and how to charge for what you do. And that kind of brings us to the bigger question of like, how much money can you make? So let's just take some examples. So here's a case study. A person gets 60 units of Botox, is not uncommon. You're charging $12 a unit, gives you $722. The person also gets 2 syringes of filler. Remember, a syringe of filler is actually a very small amount of volume, and so 2 of them would not be uncommon. And so you charge the patient a total of $2,120, and you make $960, or your products cost $960, which means you make $1,160 for 1 hour. So $1,160 for 1 hour. I don't think you're going to find that in mainstream medicine at all. Here's another example. This is actually regenerative medicine technology called PRP microneedling. And usually you sell these in a package of 3 for around $1,500, all the way up to like $2,400. We typically sell ours a little on the higher end, but each injection for a face or hair with PRP will run a minimum of $500 to $800. And that's just for one injection. Your cost of supplies for these procedures is roughly about $8. So when you do the math, your hourly profit for regenerative medical procedures is anywhere between $492 to $792. And most treatments for regenerative medical procedures, about 30 minutes. So you're making roughly around $984 to about $1,584 per hour. So not too bad, making $1,584 per hour is pretty good, especially when you're having so much fun helping people and helping people gain their confidence back. So here's an example of a patient that came in. There's Jennifer, and this patient came in for lips because, they wanted to have a lip augmentation, but they ended up getting a Dysport, which is neuromodulator. They ended up getting cheek filler and their lips. And so it's very common for patients to come in for one service and end up leaving with many of them. In fact, I'd say it's almost more the rule than the exception. Most people come in for one thing and they'll end up getting more things. And that's why it's so important for you to have those 3 skill sets, because each skill set complements each other. And so when somebody comes in for lips, for example, now you can also offer other procedures as well that complement that. So the average medical spa brings in about $1 million per year, according to AmSpa 2019 survey. And basically the top practices that are med spas can earn up to 4 to 5 million. So you can see there's a huge difference in med spas, and you can see like basically the average med spa, it makes about $1 million a year, maybe to 1.5 million. And you can see that the med spas themselves basically are very profitable with a profit margin of about 30%. So not too bad. So my question to you is, how do you feel like our time together has been well spent? Have I given you value for the time that you've taken here? And I made you a promise that you would know the next step to starting your journey to aesthetics. And let me tell you something, there's no time like the present. So is it okay if I show you a proven path? If it's okay. So here's the pathway we talked about before. Remember, you're going to want to do neuromodulator training first. You definitely want to get the training to allow you to take away wrinkles like this. It's important that you learn these injections. So we teach glabella, which is this area here, the forehead, how to do a brow lift, which is incredibly popular, how to treat crow's feet, very common, and how to do a lip flip, which is when somebody's lip is kind of curled in, you can make it flip out and make it look so much better. All that can be done with neuromodulator training. That's what we train you on. You have 4 hours of online training to learn the anatomy, to learn the didactic parts. And then when you come for hands-on training, you're in a 3-to-1 student ratio. So it's the smallest ratios that are out there, because the more that you can connect with your instructor, the more you can connect with the patient you're treating, the better your education will be. And of course, you'll get 8 CEU credits for this as well. Let's talk about dermal filler training. Here's somebody getting lips done. So, it's one of the most popular things with dermal filler. In dermal filler training, you're going to learn how to do lips. You're going to learn how to do cheeks and facial contouring, which is huge. You're going to learn how to do what's called the pre-jowl sulcus, which is like when people get those jowls that hang down. It's really bothersome, in particular for a lot of people, because it shows aging, and you'll be able to fix that. You'll also be able to fix that oral commissure. When people get lines here, you'll be able to fix those. And you'll be able to do fat pad restoration, which is when people start to lose volume as they age, you can actually help build that back up and make them look so much younger. Here's an example of someone before and after filler. As you can see, significantly different. And you have 4 hours of online didactic trainings for fillers. And once again, you have the hands-on in person with a ratio of 3 students to 1 teacher. Ultra small, ultra close. And the reason why is we really want you to have the ability to do this. I don't want you to have the same experience that I had when I was in a room of 65 people and we had 3 models. I don't want it to be like that. You will have a 3-to-1 ratio, and you have 8 CEU credits that come with this as well. And then my own personal favorite, and also the most lucrative skill set, is the regenerative aesthetic training. This one, you're going to learn how to do regenerative facials, how to do regenerative facelift, and the ever popular regenerative hair restoration. It's so fun. And here's an example of someone who had a regenerative treatment. This lady came in here, and you can see here she has these huge dark circles under her eyes. And she's not tired here. She actually slept normally, but this is the way she looked. She looked like this every day. She had these kind of huge bags under her eyes, obviously, affecting her appearance and how people perceived her. After treatment, the next day, this is her photo, and she texts, why are you magic? This is me this morning. I about died. Isn't that incredible? How many of you would like to have the ability to generate those kind of results for your patients? And so obviously for regenerative medicine training, you're going to have 4 hours online didactic training. You're going to be hands-on as well. And you're going to have another 8 CEU credits for that. You also get the patient history and physical forms. You're also going to get patient consent forms. You're also going to get pre and post procedure instructions, basically everything else you need to have in order to do these procedures, we're going to give you. So you don't have to figure it out on your own. It's all done for you. You don't have to find a form or anything like that. We have all the templates. You can use them. But what really makes our training special, and unlike anything else that's out there, is that you get part of an aesthetic community. You get a community before your training, during your training, and after your training. And why this is so important is that you need to basically have a community where you can learn all of these things. You can learn about the clinical trainings. You can ask other people like, hey, how'd you build your logo for your practice? What kind of physical space did you get? How are you doing your social media? All of this in a community that is just, to be quite honest, is priceless. There's, it's so valuable. Here's just some examples of people in our community. So this one here says, Dallas was amazing. I hope you're well. After the event, I upped my selling game and sold $1,000 in skincare today between 2 people. And it's this kind of thing that makes people so excited. And then here's another one where somebody just did their first lip filler patient. She was very scared, but she was obviously well trained. And, we kind of helped, the entire community kind of helped her and increased her confidence. And she was able to do it, even though she was afraid. And now she loves it and she's doing more of them. And here's the one saying, thank you so much. I really appreciate the challenge. We have challenges in the group where we help people with specific things. I really appreciate everything you've done for us. And so rewarding. And this is what the kind of things you can have in the community. We have live clinical trainings where you can ask questions before, during, and after the procedure. As you can see here, there's a picture of our camera. It has a microphone, and you're literally connected live with us while we're doing these procedures. So you can literally ask the trainer right before, you're like, hey, why are you doing that injection this way? Can you do it this way? You get to interact live. You also get an aesthetic mentor that is able to answer your clinical questions within 24 hours, 5 days a week. This is huge because should you ever have a patient you're not so sure about, or should I do this or should I do that? No problem. You can post that in the group. We'll get it answered for you, and you'll have an aesthetic mentor who has more than 10 years experience being able to answer that for you. You're also going to get social media training so you can harness the power of social media to grow your business and gain new patients. So everything you need is in one place, and this is what is so special is you get this ongoing community with your training, and it's just an amazing experience. So you get an amazing interaction with other people that are going through the same thing, but most importantly, you're connected to your mentors who can help guide you, because no matter how much you learn in your training, you're always going to have more questions. There's always going to be something you didn't expect. There's going to be a patient who comes in who has a disorder you weren't familiar with, and like, what do you do with that? Or a patient who has this unusual thing going on. Wouldn't it be nice if you could reach out to somebody who could help you? Well, if you go with our training, you can. So I hope this has been educational for you. And whether you do our training or someone else's training, I just hope you find your path to happiness and to your success. And please consider joining the field of aesthetic medicine. It is growing like crazy, and you can deliver results like nothing else I've ever seen. It is so exciting. So if you're interested in aesthetics, click the button below and consider starting with some training and learn how to do these procedures, and then join the community, talk to other people that are doing it, take part in the community, learn from the mentors. We have trainings that are live. You can ask questions and continue to grow your skill set. I think what you're going to find is that you will be very happy about the decision you make. Have a great evening and have a great night.